They kicked me out at 18 like I was trash. But years later, when their house burned down, they showed up at my door expecting me to save them. I don't even know where to start, so I guess I'll start with this: I was never the favorite. Not even close. In my family, favoritism wasn't something you had to guess at, it was broadcasted loud and clear. If my younger brother Nate asked for something, he got it. If I did, I was being ungrateful or demanding. And that's not just me being bitter. This is stuff people, teachers, neighbors, even extended family, would quietly mention to me in passing. The whole "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but" thing. And every time someone said it, I'd laugh it off. I'd smile and say, yeah, that's just how it is. But inside? It stung like hell. Growing up in a working-class household outside Dayton, Ohio, things weren't easy. Money was tight, sure, but it wasn't just about money. It was about how love, attention, and basic decency were doled out with some kind of twisted measuring cup. Nate got the praise, the support, the second chances. I got chores. I got lectures. I got the cold shoulder if I ever so much as questioned why. Nate and I are 3 years apart. He's younger, but you'd think he was the firstborn the way my parents doted on him. When he got a C in math, it was he's trying his best. When I got an A-, it was why not an A? When he broke a neighbor's window playing baseball, they offered to pay and bought him a new glove the next day. When I dented the garage door by accident. I wasn't allowed out for 2 months, and they made me work off the cost of repairs by mowing lawns around the neighborhood. I learned early that fairness wasn't something I could count on. That lesson sank in deep and stayed with me long after I left home. But the real breaking point came when I turned 18. I had just graduated high school, and instead of celebrating like a normal family, my parents sat me down at the kitchen table. It was early July. Hot. I remember that detail because the fan in the window was busted, and the whole kitchen smelled like mildew and lemon-scented floor cleaner. My mom, arms crossed. My dad, looking everywhere but at me. And then came the words I still hear in my sleep sometimes. You need to move out. We think it's time. I blinked. Move out? You're an adult now, my dad said, like he was reading from a script. It's time to take responsibility. Make your own way. I hadn't even picked a college yet. I had some scholarships and was planning on working part-time, but that was months away. I had no job, no apartment, no real plan beyond trying to figure it out. But none of that mattered. You can stay at your friend Jordan's for a while, right? My mom said like it was nothing. I'm sure his family won't mind. You've always been close. That hit like a slap. I realized then they weren't offering help, they weren't giving me a choice, they were kicking me out. They didn't even try to hide it. They'd cleaned out half my closet already. My younger brother was standing in the hallway with this smug little smile like he knew this was his reward. He was finally getting my room. He got the bigger space. I got the boot. I said something like, "You're seriously doing this?" But they just nodded. Told me I'd be fine. That it was for my own good. That they were teaching me responsibility. That night, I packed 2 duffel bags and left. Jordan's parents, bless them, took me in without question. I stayed in their basement for about 3 weeks, crying more times than I'd care to admit, before I started bouncing around between friends' couches and eventually rented a room in a shared house with 4 other guys. That was the start of me figuring it out the hard way. And my parents? Radio silence. I barely heard from them except for the occasional text on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Nothing that said "we love you." Nothing that said "we're proud." Meanwhile, Nate? He stayed home. Got a car. His college was paid for. My parents practically funded his life while I was scraping by on minimum wage jobs and instant ramen. I'd hear from mutual acquaintances that he posted family pics online, vacations, gifts, smiling group photos. I wasn't in any of them. It was like I'd been erased. I was bitter. God, I was bitter. And yeah, I held on to that bitterness for a long time. It burned in me. Fueled me. I swore I'd prove them wrong. That I'd make something of myself without their help. That one day they'd see me and realize what they lost. And you know what? I did. But we're not there yet. Because the climb up? That part was brutal. It took everything I had. Every ounce of strength, every bit of luck, and more than a few nights wondering if I'd made a huge mistake trying to go it alone. But the turning point? It came years later, when I finally got my first big break. And that's when everything started to change. That's when the calls started. The visits. The fake smiles. That "we always believed in you" speeches. But I never forgot that kitchen table. I never forgot being tossed aside like I was some burden they were finally free of. They thought I was trash. But I came back gold. And the way they acted when they saw that? That's a story worth telling. After getting kicked out, it took me a while to really accept that I was on my own. I kept hoping, somewhere deep down, that I'd get a call or a message saying they'd made a mistake. That they'd ask me to come back home. That never happened. Jordan's parents gave me a soft landing, but I didn't want to overstay my welcome. After 3 weeks, I packed up and started couch hopping. It was awkward. Some nights I crashed on futons. Other nights on air mattresses. Sometimes just the floor with a folded blanket and a backpack for a pillow. I got good at pretending I was fine when people asked. I picked up shifts at a gas station first. Then started working part-time at a hardware store. Nothing glamorous, but enough to keep my phone on and eat a hot meal once a day. College was a pipe dream at that point. I deferred my enrollment and put it on indefinite pause. I couldn't justify tuition when I didn't know where I'd sleep next month. I found a room in a shared house with 4 other guys, 2 of whom were in a metal band and rehearsed in the living room every other night. The place reeked of weed, old pizza, and something that I think was mold. But it was cheap, and more importantly, it was mine. The room was barely bigger than a walk-in closet. No heat, no AC, a single tiny window that let in just enough light to remind me how far I'd fallen. Still, I taped pictures of old friends to the walls, stacked my thrift store books on a milk crate shelf, and told myself it was temporary. But temporary stretched. 1 year became 2. I worked. A lot. I picked up a side gig delivering food at night. I did whatever I could to save a little. I stopped going out. My friends would invite me to bars, parties, even road trips. I said no to all of it. I couldn't afford to lose focus. Meanwhile, Nate was living it up. I saw it all on social media. He got a car. A nice one. Went on spring break trips. Dinners with our parents. Pictures of family barbecues, birthdays, even a Christmas where they had matching pajamas. I wasn't invited to any of that. I wasn't even tagged. Every now and then I get a text from my mom. Something generic. Hope you're doing well. Your brother got an internship. Happy birthday. I never responded. What was the point? But no matter how hard things got, I had this fire in my chest. A quiet, simmering rage that pushed me forward. I told myself, you'll make it. Just keep going. And somehow, I did. I used my spare time to teach myself coding. Started with YouTube videos, then cheap online courses. I studied after work until 2 or 3 a.m. most nights. It started as a way to feel like I was doing something, but it quickly became an obsession. I loved it. The logic, the creativity, the challenge. For the first time, I felt good at something. It wasn't long before I landed my first real gig, freelancing for a local business that needed a basic website. I charged next to nothing, but I treated it like it was the most important job in the world. I built that site, debugged it obsessively, even helped them set up their online payments. The client loved it and referred me to someone else. Then another. Word spread. After about a year of grinding, I was juggling 3 freelance clients while still working part-time. The money was better than anything I'd earned before. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't choosing between gas and groceries. I started saving in earnest. That's when I made the jump. I left the part-time job. Went all in on freelance. Rented a slightly better place, still modest, but with a decent bed, a desk, and enough space to breathe. I upgraded my laptop. Bought some real furniture. Nothing fancy, but mine. I didn't post about any of it. I didn't want to give my parents the satisfaction of knowing. I wanted to stay under the radar. That bitterness? It was still there. Still sharp. I wasn't ready to forgive, and I definitely wasn't ready to reconnect. But life has a funny way of testing you when you least expect it. About 6 months after I went full-time freelance, I got an offer from a small but growing tech firm in Columbus. They'd seen my portfolio and reached out. They were impressed by my work and asked if I'd consider a full-time position. Benefits, a solid salary, stock options. I couldn't believe it at first. I thought it was a scam. It wasn't. They brought me in for an interview, and I walked out with a job offer in hand. It was more money than I'd ever made in my life. It felt unreal. I moved to Columbus. Got a proper apartment with a dishwasher, central air, and a view of the skyline. I bought new clothes that actually fit. I replaced my beat-up phone. Got a gym membership. Started taking care of myself. I even bought a car, nothing flashy, but reliable and mine. Still, I didn't tell my family. I kept everything low-key. I hadn't spoken to them in nearly 4 years by then. The wounds hadn't healed. Then came the moment I slipped. It was stupid, really. I posted a photo. Just one. A shot of my apartment view with the caption, "Hard work pays off." That's it. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't mention my job, my salary, or anything specific. Just a little victory lap for myself. Within hours, my mom texted me. "Your new place looks amazing. So proud of you." I stared at it for a full minute before I replied. I didn't. Then Nate texted me the next day. "Nice view. Must be making bank, huh?" No hi. No how are you? Just straight to the point. And then came another message. "We should catch up sometime." I didn't answer that one either. But they kept coming. Little pokes. Little feelers. And I knew what was happening. They saw the success. The apartment. The life. And suddenly, I wasn't a burden anymore. I was an opportunity. And sure enough, a few weeks later, they showed up at my door. Unannounced. I remember opening it and just staring. My mom smiled like nothing had ever happened. My dad stood behind her, awkwardly clutching a bottle of wine. "Nate?" He was checking his phone. It was surreal. My mom said, "We were in town and thought we'd drop by. We wanted to see how you were doing." I wanted to slam the door in their faces. But I didn't. I let them in. Because I wanted to see it for myself, the look in their eyes when they realized I didn't need them anymore. That I'd made it without them. That the kid they kicked out had become the man they suddenly wanted back in their lives. They toured the apartment like it was a museum. Touched things. Made comments. My mom even teared up a little, said something about how proud she was. I didn't say much. Just nodded. Watched. Then Nate pulled me aside. He asked if I could help him find a job in tech. Said he was having a rough time. That maybe I could get him in at my company. That was when it all clicked. They weren't here for me. They were here for what I could do for them. They'd thrown me out like trash. But now that I'd turned myself into something valuable, suddenly they were proud. Suddenly I was family. But I hadn't forgotten. And I wasn't going to let them forget either. I remember standing in my own kitchen, and watching Nate scan the place like he was doing a real estate appraisal. He picked up a mug off my counter, read the sarcastic quote on it, and chuckled like we were lifelong buddies. My parents had plopped down on my couch like it was still their house, like the last few years didn't happen, like they hadn't made me feel like I was disposable. "Place is great, son," my dad said, reaching for the remote like it belonged to him. That word, son, landed like a punch to the gut. Not because of the word itself, but because of the gall it took for him to say it. He hadn't called me that in years. Not since the day they told me to take responsibility and tossed me out. I stood there frozen, arms crossed, back against the wall, watching my own family play house in a life I had built without them. Nate pulled me aside into the hallway, like he was trying to be discreet, but his voice was always too loud to keep anything private. "So, listen," he said. "I've been thinking of changing careers. Getting into tech. You know, something remote, flexible hours. I figured with your connections, you could help me out." I didn't answer at first. Just stared at him. He wasn't even being subtle. "And hey," he added with a grin, "I wouldn't say no to crashing here for a bit. Just till I find my feet." There it was. The real reason they came. "Are you serious?" I asked. Nate blinked, confused. "What do you mean? You want to stay here? In my apartment?" He shrugged like it was nothing. "Why not? You got the space." I walked past him into the living room and found my parents still lounging, flipping through my streaming services like it was family movie night. "So this was the plan?" I said aloud. "Come visit, butter me up, then ask to move in?" My mom looked up, fake confused. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You kicked me out, remember? Said I needed to learn responsibility? And now suddenly, what? I'm responsible enough to let Nate crash on my couch." The room went quiet. Uncomfortably so. "You're being dramatic," my dad muttered. "Am I?" I snapped. "Let's go back. You kicked me out when I was 18. No job, no car, no plan. You didn't even help me move out. You just wanted me gone. And now that I've made something of myself, you show up here with smiles and wine and ask for favors. My mom's lips trembled, but I didn't stop. I worked for everything here. Every square foot of this place is mine. Not yours. You don't get to claim it now just because it turned out better than you expected. We just want to reconnect, she said, reaching for that well-worn line. Bull, I said. You didn't want a connection. You wanted convenience. You wanted to cash in. They started protesting all at once, too loudly, too fast, the way people do when they know they're cornered. I held up a hand. You don't get to rewrite history. I remember it all. The cold shoulders. The silence. The way you made me feel like a burden while Nate got everything. I've spent the last 6 years alone, sleeping on floors, eating dollar ramen, hustling every second, and not once did you call to ask if I was okay. My voice cracked at the end of that. That's how I knew I wasn't just angry. I was hurt. Deeply. And now you want to be part of my life again? No one spoke. My dad looked like he wanted to argue, but even he couldn't find the words. Nate had the nerve to look offended, as if I had insulted him by setting a boundary. I think you should go, I finally said. They looked at me like I was kicking them out. Like I was the one being cruel. We drove all the way up here, my mom said quietly, standing up. And you can drive back just as easily, I replied. This isn't your home. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. But they understood. They left without another word. Nate slammed the door on the way out. That night, I sat in the silence of my apartment and let everything crash over me, the rage, the sadness, the disbelief. For a minute, I felt like that 18-year-old kid again, sitting on Jordan's basement couch with nothing but a duffel bag and a whole lot of hurt. But that feeling didn't last long. Because this time, I was in my home. With my furniture. My life. And they couldn't take that from me. The next few weeks were oddly quiet. I expected more calls, texts, guilt trips, but there was nothing. Maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they were regrouping. Either way, I took the silence as a blessing. I poured myself into work. Took on more projects. Pushed for a leadership role at the company and got it. The money was great, sure. But more than that, I liked being in charge. I liked having a say. After being treated like I didn't matter for so long, having people value my input felt surreal. I started mentoring some of the new hires. A few of them reminded me of younger me, eager, broke, unsure. I made time for them. Gave them advice, bought them lunch, let them vent when work got overwhelming. I wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. I just knew what it was like to feel invisible. One of the guys I mentored, a kid named Elias, ended up telling me I was the reason he didn't quit during his first month. That hit me harder than I expected. And for the first time in years, I felt steady. Whole. Like maybe the weight I'd been dragging around didn't own me anymore. But just as I was beginning to let my guard down, it happened. Another knock on my door. Only this time, it wasn't just my family. It was my family, with a suitcase. We need a place to stay, Nate said flatly. Mum and Dad's house burned down last night. And just like that, everything came rushing back. Every emotion. Every memory. Every choice I thought I'd made with finality. They were standing on my doorstep again. But this time, things were different. Because I wasn't that kid anymore. I had power now. And what I did next? Well, that set the stage for everything that followed. I stood there in the doorway, looking at the three of them, Nate, my mom, and my dad, each holding a suitcase or bag, clothes rumpled, faces marked with exhaustion and expectation. That last part was the one that stuck with me. Not desperation. Not humility. Expectation. They looked at me like I owed them this. Like, despite everything that had passed between us, of course I'd let them in. They were family, right? My first instinct was to slam the door. The second was to laugh in their faces. Instead, I took a deep breath and leaned against the door frame. You said the house burned down? Last night, my dad replied, not meeting my eyes. Electrical fire. Started in the garage. Lost almost everything. My mom nodded, her eyes already glossy with tears. We didn't know where else to go. What about insurance? I asked. We're still sorting it out, Nate said, shrugging. But it'll be weeks before anything happens. Maybe months. And in the meantime? He looked me dead in the eye. We figured you could help us out. Just for a bit. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me so they couldn't come in. Help you out how, exactly? Just let us stay, my mom said. Just for a little while. Until we get back on our feet. They were all looking at me with that same hopeful, manipulative, rehearsed expression. I recognized it. The guilt game. I'd seen it before. You think this is the part where I save the day? I asked, voice low. Where the black sheep turns around and opens his home to the family who threw him away. We didn't throw you away, my mom protested quickly. My laugh came out bitter. You kicked me out when I was still a teenager. No support. No help. Nate got a car, and I got a couch. You think I forgot that? That was years ago, my dad snapped. Don't be petty. Petty? I repeated, raising my eyebrows. You think this is petty? I stepped forward, just enough for my voice to drop and still be heard. Do you know what it's like to be 18 with nowhere to go? To sell your stuff just to eat? To live out of a garbage apartment while you pretend you're not falling apart every night? I begged for some kind of connection. You ignored me. My mom sniffled. We thought we were doing what was best. No. You thought I was inconvenient, I shot back. And now that you need me, suddenly I'm family again? There was a long silence. Nate finally spoke. Look. I get it. You've got a chip on your shoulder. And maybe we screwed up. But we're not here to fight. We just need a place to stay. And I'm sure, I said, crossing my arms, if I let you in, you'll stay a bit longer than planned. Just until the insurance clears. Just until a new house is found. Just until you feel like leaving. And I'll be paying the bills, footing the food, giving up my privacy, while you all sit around like it's still your house. That's not fair, my mom whispered. No, I replied, what's not fair is the way you all treated me for years. And now you're standing here asking for my roof after you left me without one. My dad's face hardened. You'd really turn away your own blood? I looked him straight in the eye. You did it first. He opened his mouth again, but I wasn't done. You didn't care when I had nothing. Don't pretend to care now that I've got something to lose. That silence that followed? That was the moment everything cracked. Their polite mask slipped. And beneath it, I saw the same entitlement, the same arrogance that had always been there. You've changed, Nate said coldly. You think money makes you better than us? No, I replied. I think being treated like trash for most of my life makes me wary of letting you back in. I paused, then added, but if it helps you sleep at night, sure, pretend it's the money. They looked stunned. Not because I was wrong, but because I wasn't backing down. I was supposed to be the quiet one. The obedient one. The one who took the hits and said thank you anyway. Not anymore. Go get a hotel, I said. There are plenty around here. If you're short on cash, I can give you a referral to a shelter. Or maybe call one of those relatives you told I was troubled when I left. Wow, Nate muttered. Unbelievable. Yeah, I nodded. That's how I felt 6 years ago when you helped Mom clean out my room like it was your reward. My mom wiped at her eyes, but I didn't feel an ounce of pity. I wasn't cruel. I was clear. For once. You should go now, I said. They stood there for another beat, 3 figures in the fading daylight, clutching their bags like they couldn't believe the door wasn't opening. But it didn't. They left without another word. The fallout hit fast. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls from extended family. My Aunt Lisa. My cousin Mark. Even my grandma, who barely knew how to use her phone. The story had spread, and surprise, surprise, I was painted as the villain. He turned his family away in their time of need. He refused to help after their house burned down. What kind of man does that? I didn't reply to any of it. Not until I was ready. Then I posted something on my socials. No long rant. No smear campaign. Just a photo of my apartment view again, captioned. Funny how the people who threw you away are the first to knock when they see you standing on something they didn't build. That post got more traction than I expected. I got private messages, some supportive, some confused. But the best ones were the quiet acknowledgements from people who'd been there too. My parents did the same thing. Glad you stood your ground. This gave me courage. I realized then that this wasn't just about my family. It was about reclaiming who I was. Drawing a line. Saying no after years of being told I didn't have a right to. But it wasn't over. Because a week later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a note. You may have all this now, but remember, you wouldn't exist without us. You owe us. One day, you'll see that. No signature. But I didn't need one. I knew exactly whose handwriting it was. It was my mother's. And that was the moment I knew. They weren't just entitled. They were dangerous. And this wasn't over yet. I stared at the note in my hand for a long time. The words weren't even that long, maybe 3 or 4 lines, but the weight of them felt like bricks on my chest. You may have all this now, but remember, you wouldn't exist without us. You owe us. One day, you'll see that. No signature. Just jagged, familiar handwriting, like she'd scratched it in with all the bitterness she'd been carrying since I slammed the door on them. I sat down at my desk, the note resting between my fingers, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. It finally made sense. The years of cold shoulders. The manipulation. The weird justifications. It had never been about what I was doing wrong, it was about what I refused to become. They expected me to be grateful for being treated like an afterthought. To stay small. To stay obedient. To stay beneath Nate. And the moment I stepped out of that role? The moment I built something without their blueprint? I became a threat. An inconvenience. The note didn't make me angry. If anything, it set me free. I folded it neatly, slipped it into a drawer with a few other mementos, my old work badge, a photo from my first apartment, the acceptance email from the job that changed everything. Not because I wanted to keep it close, but because I wanted to remember how far I'd come. The next day, I blocked every number they had ever used. Changed my email. Locked down every privacy setting on my social media. Even went so far as to install a security system on my apartment, not because I thought they'd break in, but because I didn't trust that they wouldn't try something. They'd already tried guilt. Entitlement. Intimidation. And now threats cloaked in passive-aggressive reminders. I wasn't giving them another inch. 2 weeks passed. Then one of my mom's sisters, my Aunt Karen, reached out. We hadn't talked in years, not since I was a teenager, and she tried to warn me that things at home weren't normal. I didn't believe her back then. I do now. She didn't come at me with blame or expectations. Just said, I heard what happened. I'm sorry it took something like this for me to reach out. We talked for an hour. Turned out she'd been quietly watching from the sidelines for years. She'd always suspected my parents played favorites. Had seen the patterns. She told me Nate had been coddled since birth. That my mom once told her I was too independent and hard to control. Translation, she said with a chuckle, you had boundaries and wouldn't kiss the ring. I laughed. Genuinely. For the first time in a while. Aunt Karen became someone I could trust. Someone who didn't try to rewrite history or sweep things under the rug. She didn't try to fix anything, she just listened. And that was enough. Funny how healing can come from the most unexpected places. The rest of my life started moving again. Work was booming. I'd taken on a leadership role in a new project and was mentoring a small team. I'd started dating someone too, Emily. Met her through a mutual friend at a rooftop gathering. She was smart, honest, and had this gentle but firm way of asking questions that made me actually want to open up. I didn't dump my whole life story on her right away. But when I did, she didn't flinch. She just said, I'm proud of you for surviving that. Most people don't come out of families like that in one piece. That's when I realized, maybe I didn't come out in one piece. But the pieces I rebuilt? They were stronger. Sharper. Real. Emily came with me to my company's end-of-year celebration. While we were there, one of the higher-ups pulled me aside. Told me they were impressed with my work, the way I'd handled difficult clients, the leadership I'd shown. They were expanding the team, looking for someone to head the new branch opening in another city. It's yours if you want it, they said. It hit me like a punch, in a good way. Me. The kid who got kicked out with a backpack and $20. Being offered the lead role on a new project. With a relocation package, a raise, and my pick of the team. I accepted, obviously. And that's when I made the last big decision. I put my apartment up for rent and bought a house. Nothing massive. Just a cozy place in a quiet neighborhood in Charlotte with big windows, a fenced-in backyard, and a spare bedroom I turned into an office. It was peaceful. Mine. The day I got the keys, I sat on the front porch with a beer and looked at the yard. And I laughed. Not bitter. Not mocking. Just free. Because it hit me. They threw me out like trash. But I didn't stay discarded. I fought. I failed. I bled. I kept going. And in the end? I didn't need revenge. I didn't need some dramatic I told you so. I had something better. A life of my own making. A future they couldn't control. A peace they'd never understand. And that? That was more than enough. Because sometimes the best payback is living the life they said you never could.